Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be doing a deck profile on my new updated Genesis Witch deck. So this is the Witches. These are like the good ones. They're on the Genesis side instead of the Shadow ones, which are on the Shadow Paladin side. So the Genesis Witches are different from the Shadow Paladin Witches in the sense that they focus more on powering themselves up with like magic stuff versus the Shadow Paladins, which are more about cursing the opponent's field and messing them up and weakening them. So the deck changed slightly. It got a little bit better than it was before, but it's not a whole lot better in playtesting it. It just got a slight little update here. We'll go over it. It's a little bit better in stride format than it was before. I'm just trying to keep up with everyone else, but in my opinion, it's still got some... it's still kind of down there in terms of the competitive play ability compared to, say, Regalia with Yggdrasil and even the Fenrir build. Or even like Artemis in the older decks. So, but it's still a really fun deck to play overall. And if anyone's not aware of what they do, they kind of have to pay more attention. So for White Snake Witch Mint, so this is the main Vanguard. This is still the better Vanguard out of the two Witch Legion Vanguards. It's a Legion. When it does its effect with Soul Blast 6, it gets 10,000 power, and all your rear guard with Witch in the name in the front row get plus 5,000. So it powers up the front row, especially the center line. It can only do it when it's in Legion, and it also has the effect of, it's a main phase effect. If you have another Witch in the center, in the middle column, you can counter plus 1 as Soul Charge 3. You can only do it once per turn. And that's good to help set up the Soul, so that way when the Stride units use Soul Blast, she can sort of fix it so that she can use her effect. Next, we have 4 Witch of Eagles Fennel. So Fennel's still in here, unlike Nyx in Regalia. Fennel, the double R Vanguard, is actually still a pretty good choice. Otherwise, I'd probably be running like a non-Witch card, which would kind of mess up the theme. But she's another Legion. She also has an effect when she's placed on V. She can counterblast 1 to Soul Charge 3. So it's not as good as Mint. But she has her Legion effect to look at 5 cards from the top of the deck, and you can search for 2 of them with Witch in the name, and you can add them to your hand and shuffle the deck. So she's kind of like an Oracle Think Tank type of card, in my opinion, how she is used. But normally you want to be using Mint to push for game because of the high attack power. But Fennel's not that bad. Next, 4 Witch of Golden Eagles Jasmine. So this is Fennel's Legion mate. Jasmine is one of the better Genesis Witch cards. When she's placed on R, if you have a Vanguard with Witch in the name, so it has to be either of these or anything with Witch in the name. If you're in extreme format, you can counterblast 1, Soul Charge 3, and she gets 3k, making her a 12k for that turn. So it's a pretty decent effect. And it's a Legion mate, so we max the copies on it. Next, 4 Black Snake Witch Chicory. This is the Legion mate for Mint. It's just the 12k for the Witches, for the Genesis Witches. So that's, and it's a Legion mate, so it's pretty self-explanatory, so for that. And then the next card is where it changed. So here, this used to be Witch of something Chamomile. Witch of Eagles Chamomile or something, or I forgot the name, but anyway, it was the one that when it was Soul Blasted, you could counterblast 1 to Superior Call it to R. This does the same thing. The only difference is this only can do that when you have a Vanguard with Witch in the name. And then in addition to that, this thing gets plus 2k till the end of the turn. So this thing hits the field, when it's Soul Blasted to the drop zone, you can counterblast 1, and it hits the field at 11k, so it's a little bit better than Chamomile, and because everything is Witch anyway, in terms of what the Vanguard will be, this is just it's just an upgrade, basically. So, 3 of this. For grade 1s, I did change it to 4 Witch of Strawberries Framboise. So this, I used to have the Quintet wall in here at like a 1 copy, or even I think 2 copies at one point. So I did drop it completely, and now they're just running the traditional Perfect Guards. They have Witch in the name, that's the reason why. It just helps Fennel's effect be 100% consistent, or just a lot more consistent. So you can just add these to your hand instead of worrying about just getting like a perfect guard or a quintet while not being able to add it. So for this, it's the Witch Sentinel, self-explanatory. Next, we have 4 of a new card, Witch of Melons, Theme. This one is actually a really good one. So definitely I recommend running max copies of this unless you really want to run the 10k grade 1, which isn't really necessary at this point because of Stride being so fast anyway. But anyway, this, when the unit is placed on R, if you have a Vanguard with Witch in the name, you can look at 3 cards from the top of the deck. You get to pick one of them, put it in your soul, and put the rest in the drop zone. So this thing is just automatically good with setting up for Legion. There's been so many games where I've only had like 2 where I'm capable of Legioning. I can't Stride because I don't have a grade 3 to discard. And I only have like 2 cards in the drop zone, so I call this out, put 1 card in the soul, so it's like soul charge 1 of your choice out of 3 cards, and then the other 2 cards go in the drop zone. So you could mill like triggers to the drop zone because it's going to get stacked back in anyway because of Legion and stuff like that. So it really just helps set up for Legion. So definitely 4 copies of this thing. And then 3 Witch of Frogs Melissa. So this used to be well, it used to team up with Chamomile because they do the same exact thing. Now this teams up with Cardamon. So 3 of each, so that's 6 targets. They're going to get soul charge anyway. Things in the drop zone don't stay in the drop zone that much because of Legion, although you will prioritize triggers over these. But anyway, you'll typically call these. And on top of that, with this card will basically search, like if you get one of these in the top 3, you can obviously just soul charge one of these with that effect. So 3 and 3 is enough of each. And then 3 of Witch of Oranges, Valencia, because Valencia is like, well, she's a witch card and she just helps refill the soul. So when you soul blast her, it's like soul blasting 1 instead of 2. Because when she's soul blasted, you can soul charge 2. So she keeps the soul discounted, so you get more effects off that way. So it's a pretty good target with this card searching, so that's why. So that's the grade 1. So you can see the grade 1's lineup changed a little bit, as well as the grade 2. For grade 0s, it did change as well. So we still have the 4 Kukurihime because she's like the best critical for Genesis. And then 4 of this new critical trigger. 4 Witches Familiar Shiroma. This thing has an effect where you can take it from the rear guard during the main phase. You can put it on the top of the deck. If you have a Vanguard with Witch in the name, you can draw 1 card, then you can look at 3 cards, search for 1 from among them. So this card does the exact same thing as the grade 1 Witch of Melons. So it just allows the deck to run 8 copies of a card that has this type of search effect. So I do kind of like that. It does give the witches more of like a tech type of way of selecting things that go into the soul, kind of like Pale Moon in that regard. So I do like how they kind of innovated there for the witches specifically. And then the remaining cards are the 4 Lemon Witch Lemosino. This is the Witch Critical, the original one, so now they've got 8. And then Witch of Big Pots, Laurier. This is the Witch Heal, which is actually the original Genesis Heal. So yeah, so 12 critical for heal because Genesis can get away with 12 criticals just like Oracle Think Tank. The deck generates a lot of pressure. You're going to be building big power columns on the Legion push turn, and then they're going to feel like no guarding, and they're just going to get killed from a double crit or something like that. So 12 crit definitely recommended. And then the starter is still Witch of Prohibited Book Cinnamon because it's the best starter for the witches. Basically, when the attack hits, that she boosted a grade 3, put her in the soul and soul charge 2, so it's like soul charge 3 for a -1. So it helps pay for the cost of the effects of Soul Blast 3 and Soul Blast 6. For the Stride deck, 2 of the Great Angel Doombrace. This is probably the best Stride unit for the witches because it's Soul Blast 3. It powers up 2 rear guards by 5k, so it helps. It does the same kind of thing as this thing. And then it can soul charge 3 if you have 2 or less soul, so that either Fennel or her won't have too difficult of a time trying to rebuild the soul. So 2 of him. 2 of the Mythical Destroyer Beast, because he does kind of work in here, although again it'll be really hard to build the soul. You'll have to rely on having like 12 soul early, and then you'll be using this to hope to get stuff like this in there to try to mitigate the soul blasting costs and stuff like that. But 2, so we can use this effect once if the match allows for it. 2, Firmament Dione, because it is a pretty decent card. Again, it's another card that does the exact same thing as Thymie and the critical trigger. So it allows the witches to actually get even more ways of doing that. It gives the Vanguard the ability to do that. And then 1 Madu, because every Vanguard that's grade 3 is Legion, and then 1 Blizza because it can end some games, and the deck does not counterblast a whole lot. So that's basically it in a nutshell. The deck is pretty fun to play. It's not that competitive, but like I said, it's still a pretty cool deck. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, stay tuned for more Cardfight Vanguard videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.